Good afternoon on this Sunday, January 12th, 2020. I am Dennis Wirth, host of Funny Like Clown Podcast. This is episode 46. As always, Funny Like Clown Podcast is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time, there is only one G Vegas, available at www.gvegas.webs.com. And we're discussing comedians, and today we got an iconic female comedian we're going to be discussing, Lily Tomlin. And to do that, I have on the phone Boston comedian Bob Gautreau. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dennis. It's a pleasure to talk about Lily Tomlin.
Well, thank you very much for being on. Well, I asked you what comedian you want to discuss. You chose her. What made you choose her?
Well, she was first in my life. You know, when you're a little kid, you're watching TV, and if you were lucky enough to stay up past a certain time, you got to watch Laugh-In, which was comedy. Do you know about Laugh-In, Dennis?
Well, I see here that was her first breakout role. Came before she was a big star. Was on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In from '69 to '73. So I'll defer to you. You probably remember it better than me. What do you remember about the show?
I remember like being 7 years old, and she did. We knew it was her, but she did more than one character on the show.
Right.
So first of all, let me tell you about Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Everybody at the time said it was really new and it was a breakthrough show. And it was very psychedelic. It was totally 60s. In between breaks, they would have the girls dancing with painted bodies and everything. Goldie Hawn came out of that show. Artie Johnson, Henry Gibson, Alan Seuss, Joanne Worley. They were all in there. And basically, it was a remake of a thing called Earl Carroll's Vanities,
Okay.
which used to be on Broadway in the 20s and 30s. And in that show, it would be a dark theater, and the lights would come up stage left, and they'd say a quick joke, and the lights would go out, and then the lights come up stage right, and they'd say a quick joke. And they became quickies, and that's all Laugh-In was, which was a series of very socially conscious for the 60s topics, but told in the same burlesque style that people had been using since the early 1920s. But everybody thought it was great. They had a great big psychedelic wall. Everybody would come out. And Lily Tomlin was on this show, and she had two main characters. And one of them was Ernestine, that was the operator, and she was just mean and rude to everybody. But she had different little skits about different little topics.
Okay.
And Edith Ann was, so here she is a human, and imagine her sitting in a very big rocking chair that makes her look like a little girl.
Right. So would you say this was like the Saturday Night Live of its time, or?
It was, Saturday Night Live did more full skits, like your show of shows.
Okay, but like you're saying, for that time, the 70s, you couldn't do as much as Saturday Night Live did now. So, I mean, for the time, it was the show all the big comedians went on, or?
Everybody wanted to be on this show. So there was this woman who made this saying famous in the 60s. Her name is Judy Carn, and Judy Carn always said, "Sock it to me, sock it to me, sock it to me." So they'd say, "Sock it to me," and they'd throw a bucket of water on her. Then the next week it would be ice. Then the next week it would be a fire extinguisher. She said, "Sock it to me," and the world socked it to her.
So that was the catchphrase, "Sock it to me," right?
Right. It was the catchphrase of the day. And even the president, Richard Nixon, went on there and said, "Sock it to me," and that was right before the bastard.
Well, hey, if you get the president coming there saying, "Well, hey, you're doing pretty good."
Right. So here I am, 7 years old. I'm doing Edith Ann and Ernestine, and I just thought she was it. You know, if some kids listen to Guns N' Roses in their room, I listen to.
You were listening to Lily Tomlin, right? Okay.
So now you got to understand. So now she comes out with her albums, and the albums are just fantastic albums. One of them is Edith Ann, and it's all about Lily Tomlin having a discussion with this little girl. But when you see her do it, and when you hear her do it, she's the total
two different
epitome
things
of what a good storyteller is.
Right.
When she's a character, she's a character. When she's herself, she's herself. She can play both of them at the same time, or just one.
Well, when you're telling a story, your facial expressions and your hand motions, that's part of the story. And if you don't see that, you lose a little bit from it.
Right, but it was more than that. So you got to understand, I'm an impressionist, okay?
Right.
So for years, I would sound exactly like people, but I didn't look like people. So a lot of my, peers in show business said, "Why don't you try and look more like people?"
Go into
And
character.
so that's what I would do. I can. So I'm the man of 1,000 faces and voices, and I can look as much like George Burns as I can Bette Midler, and make you think that the real person was standing right in front of you.
Sure.
That's what I do. But Lily Tomlin showed me how to do it.
Okay, so she was someone who inspired you then to do what you do?
Oh my God!
So much,
if I wanted to be anybody, well, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be the comic that did other characters. Like Red Skelton had more than one character.
Right.
Jonathan Winters has more than one character. And Lily Tomlin, did many characters as well.
Right. Well, it says here she got her start on off-Broadway. Now, can you explain what's the difference between performing on Broadway and performing off-Broadway for the listeners that don't know?
It's all the same area, but it's just a better neighborhood.
Okay. Probably more money involved, I guess. If you're on Broadway, you get more. Off-Broadway is probably less money.
Like a little further out of town.
Right, but it's less money, but it's more people. They have a stage to do what they love to do. Where if you're on Broadway, you're at the top of your game, right?
Right.
All right. So currently, she's starring as Frankie in Frankie and Bernstein on Netflix's Grace and Frankie from 2015. Yeah. What do you remember about that show?
I've never seen that show.
You've never seen that show. All right. Netflix seems to be the big thing all the comedians are going to. Why do you think they think TV's on its way out? And they're getting all the big comedians. Eddie Murphy's going to be making his comeback on Netflix. Do you think everything's going to the computer now, comedy-wise?
I'd hate to think so. I really do like the whole idea of a person and an audience in person.
Right.
That's the thing, And in case people don't know about the history of show business, before there was television and radio, people used to go out to theater to see plays and movies, plays and things all the time, and entertainment.
Sure.
Until the movies came out and they stopped seeing the plays.
But there's not like a live audience when you're performing.
And then television came out and people stopped seeing the movies.
Right.
So now I think now that people have been shut in since the 90s and cable and the internet and all that stuff, I think people are ready to come out again and see live shows. Go have some fun for once. Instead of just having it in your living room.
Well, let's hope it goes back to that, because these kids seem glued to their phone nowadays. That's all they want to do is stare at their phone, but let's hope they start getting back out to some live shows. Let's see, she was nominated for 4 Primetime Emmys, 3 Screen Actor Guild Awards, and 1 Golden Globe. I think the Screen Actor Guilds, because that's pretty much your peers telling you, if your peers tell you they respect what you do, to me that'd be more than, it's great to have the fans, but when your own peers are saying, hey, I wish I was you, that's kind of a compliment to what she does, don't you think?
Yes. Well, the interesting thing about a lot of her work is it's just so profound. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's multi-layered. So on one meaning, it's just fluff, but on the other, it's totally brilliant. Like she says, wouldn't it be great if we took everybody walking around talking to themselves and paired them up to make it look like they were having conversation?
That's genius thinking right there, right?
And this joke, you got to understand, I do comedy. Comedy is my life.
Right.
People laughed at this joke, and I was like, why is this joke funny? Let me tell you the joke. Today, I went shopping, and I bought a waste paper basket. I carried it home in a paper bag. When I got home, I put the paper bag in the waste basket.
It's a simple observation.
Funny, I don't know, but
it's so simple. It's
funny.
But they say the real life stuff's funnier than anything you can make up. Just like simple things everybody can relate to is much funnier. Let's see. In 1974, she was cast in Nashville, where she was earned nominations for a Golden Globe and an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Do you remember anything about Nashville?
I do remember something about Nashville.
What's that?
The famous song that came out of that movie, I think it won Best Oscar for Best Song. But it's called I'm Easy, and it was sung by Keith Carradine, who happened to be one of the kids He's David Carradine's little brother. He's one of John Carradine's kids.
Okay.
So he sings the song, and he's having his character in this movie is having affairs with maybe about 3 different women, and he's singing these songs, and you see these women singing it, sitting in the audience, and they think he's singing to them. But the way Robert Altman, I believe it's Robert Altman, shoots the film, you can clearly see that he's singing it in the back to Lily Tomlin.
Oh.
And the look on her face, oh my God.
Okay.
And that's the thing about her. A lot of times you really don't know whether you want to laugh or cry. I mean, if you've ever seen All of Me, that's a great example.
Right. I see. 1977, her performance of Margot Sperling in The Late Show won her Best Actress at the Berlin Film Festival, nominations for a Golden Globe, and BAFTA for Best Lead Actress. What do you remember about The Late Show?
There's a line in this movie, and it's Art Carney and Lily Tomlin is the pair.
Right.
And they're sort of like Tracy and Hepburn. And he's the gruff old man, and she's the hopeful young thing. And, but he says something to her, and she says, "Are you kidding me? Does the Pope shit in the woods?"
That's risque, especially for the time.
And I remember that line. I bet you there's something in this in what you're talking about that they're not even going to mention. What was the movie she was in that's the most terrible movie of all time with John Travolta? It was just the worst movie. I don't even know the name of it. It was that bad. But anyway.
Anyway, I can't remember. Well, I mean, but she took some risks. I mean, do you think as a comedian you have to stand out, you have to take risks sometimes?
You do. I want to tell you something. There's an interesting thing she did. She had some of her characters are men. So when she does videos of the characters, she wants to look like the characters.
Right.
So there's Rick, the guy in the singles bar, and she looks just like, oh my God, the Rolling Stone interview. If you ever see the picture of her dressed up as Rick, you're like, that's Lily Tomlin?
Right.
Looks like some,
well, you mentioned that when you said you wanted to talk about Lily Tomlin. I'm horrible with names, I'll freely admit, but I remember faces till the day I die. And the second I Googled her, I'm like, oh, okay, I know who that is. I didn't hit her name, didn't have them, but I'll read off a few of the shows she's been in. 1980, From 9 to 5 with Dolly Parton. 1984, All of Me. 1988, Big Business. 1996, Flirting with Disaster. 1999, Tea with Mussolini. 2004, I Heart Huckabee. 2015, Grandma. Do you have any favorites in that list there?
Oh my God! If you went one by one, I could tell you what I like about each.
Well, 9 to 5. That was where I recognized. I'm like, that's where I know her from. 9 to 5 with Dolly Parton. But what do you remember about that?
And it's one of the funniest movies of all time, especially just the structure of it was a great comedy structure.
Sure.
That they were going after him, and they all had their own fantasy moments about him and all that stuff. And I like episodic stories like that where people take a second to show you their own ideal reality in a dream sequence. You know what I'm saying? I just think it's a great vehicle, and it worked really well in that movie. And there's little jokes in there that a lot of people miss. Like they're sitting in the car and they think they've got Dabney Coleman dead in the trunk, and she goes, "Oh my God, I'm a murderer." And Dolly Parton goes, "No, you're not." She goes, "All right, I'm a murderess." And then the cop pulls them over. She said, "Let's get out of here." No, you got. And Dolly Parton goes, "No, you got to talk to him." She says, "Are you kidding? I just killed the boss. You don't think they're not going to give me a ticket for that?" She's so real.
The off observations, yeah.
What's after? You got to see All of Me.
All of Me, okay.
Because you can tell that Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin worked together. Because the story was that her soul wound up sharing his body. Okay. So she didn't have to learn his behaviors, but he had to learn hers. Because when when their bodies are fighting, oh my God, Steve Martin is funny.
Right, and you pretty much got to be at the top of your game. I mean, Steve Martin, he's one of the godfathers of comedy from our generation. If you're playing opposite Steve Martin, she's at the top of her game, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and that's the thing. Remember, I was talking about you don't know if you're going to laugh or cry.
Right.
In All of Me, she has some crying scenes, dude, that are just. I mean, at once you really just want to cry along with her, but she's crying so bad that you want to laugh. You don't know which to do.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, especially at the time. I mean, comedy's a male-dominated business back then, and I mean, her and Joan Rivers, I mean, for the time, you had to be twice as funny as the guys to stand out as a female comedian, where today there's just as many female comics as male.
Absolutely. Now, there's a story for you. Can I tell you this one about Lily Tomlin and Joan Rivers? It's a great story.
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
So, they're working at a place in New York. This is what I heard them talking about. I saw it on an interview once. They're working at upstairs, downstairs, and after the and every now and then they would catch little glimpses of each other's acts. So when they saw each other leaving the theater, they would usually say to each other, "Here's the line I heard tonight," and they'd say the line. Okay?
Yeah.
So the bit that Joan Rivers liked that Lily Tomlin did is this one, and it's a very, very rare bit. And it's called The Party Lady. And the party lady's at the funeral. So can I do this for you, Dennis? It's a funny bit.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So, hey, how you doing? How you doing? Well, look at everybody. You look like somebody died. Where's poor Betty? There you are. How are you, darling? Oh, I'm sorry. I know you're broken up because he's gone. Yeah. Where is he? Look over. Is that Harry? That don't look like Harry. Hey, anybody got some lipstick? Throw me up here some lipstick. And then she takes the lipstick and she draws on the corpse.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
So it's overly inappropriate.
Right? Well, hey, throw me over that wig. Well, pull it off her head. And then she catches the wig and she puts the wig on the corpse. She sits the corpse up and she starts going, I really got to do this. You know, she goes, somebody get me a glass of water. Somebody get me a glass of water.
Huh.
You know what I'm saying? And
Just the character it was, right?
Rivers' favorite Lily Tomlin line.
Right. So she's so inappropriate it was funny, but I mean, it's a catch-22. I mean, even back then you had to be... I think the 80s you could pretty much do whatever you want. Before that you had to be careful, but we're living in a time now where everybody's offended by anything. It's almost impossible to be a comedian now. If she did some of the stuff she did back then now, people be losing their minds, don't you think?
I sure do. The other thing, I was just poking around on YouTube about her last night because I wanted to know more about her.
Right.
And they on the Ellen show, the story came out that some magazine wanted to put her on the cover if she would come out of the closet.
Right.
And that was in 1974.
Right.
But you got to understand, in 77 she comes out. I think in 77 she came out with the album Modern Scream, which is a parody of Modern Scream magazine, where she does tons and tons of her characters.
Right.
And I just thought that was fantastic. I wanted to talk to you about a bit that was from that show. Because you see, I knew she had been nominated for that Art Carney movie, The Late Show.
Right.
I knew she'd been nominated for that, so I knew she was a serious actress. And here I am, a teenage kid, and this is what I'm thinking. You know, she's a serious actress now. She's not just a comedian. Yeah, she's a good comic. Yeah, she's a good character comic. But she is an actress.
All right. Well,
so my sister takes me to. I got to tell you this bit. Dude.
Yeah, go ahead.
So they take me to see the show, and first of all, I'm so enamored that after everybody else stopped applauding, I must have applauded for a good 5 minutes after everybody else had stopped laughing.
Right.
So the stranger next to me held my hands and said, "Would you please stop?"
He had to make you
So,
stop.
but there's this bit, and talk about this being, you talk about being politically correct. I thought she wasn't doing a comic monologue. I thought she was doing a serious monologue.
Oh.
Because of what her character was going through.
Right.
If you're a comic, the premise and the jokes are literally brilliant. Can I do the bit for you? It's called The Rubber Freak.
Let's hear it.
Okay? Did I tell you I'm a rubber freak? It's all right. I can talk about it now. Come to think, it all started with rubber bands. I wasn't exactly swallowing them in them days. I was just sort of munching on them. You ever done that? And then one day I sat down and went to balance my checkbook. I must have blacked out. Because when I came to, I realized I had eaten the eraser right off my pencil. Wasn't no time I was up to 20 pencils a day. First I was careful, door stops, backs off the shag rug, the tip off my grandma's cane. And then the lies came. My husband Walt came in. I was just finishing off a typewriter eraser. I had the brush sticking out of my mouth. I told him I was chewing on my eyelashes. Well, the garden hose went, and then on rainy days I began to hang around grade school cloakrooms. There was a court psychiatrist, God love him, he looked that court in the eye. He said, "This woman is no criminal. She's just twisted." I tell you, I was on my hands and knees thanking that man. Well, so what, I ate his crepe soles. But thank God I'm no longer a woman obsessed with an unnatural craving. Now I'm just a normal, average, everyday, socially acceptable alcoholic.
There you go.
And that's the bit.
And you thought she was serious on all that?
I thought she was serious, dude. I was 14 years
That's funnier
old,
to me than the
and
bit.
when the crowd at the Orpheum Theater started to laugh, I turned around and I shushed the crowd.
All right. Well, let's go on to the next thing. Her signature performance was a play written by her now wife, Jane Wagner, The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, which opened on Broadway in 1985. What do you remember about that, hearing about that? Anything?
Again, it was just brilliant. So you got to understand, you meet Ernestine and Edith in on Laugh-In, and then you hear about them in Modern Scream there and there too with the other characters. And Modern Scream sort of developed into the on-stage show that she did.
Right.
And then that developed into the Signs of Intelligence from the Universe. That play is literally brilliant.
And being live's a lot more difficult than TV, because TV, if you mess up, it's take two, take three. Live, there ain't no takes. You got to get it right the first shot.
That's right. And she, again, all of it was there. You saw all the recurring characters. You saw new characters. She did this thing. It must have been a good 30, 40-minute piece called Glenna, a Child of the 60s.
Okay.
And it's all about this kid as she's growing up and dating and having children and getting divorced. And they're all conversations she's having with her best friend. But again, it's, you listen to her the first time for the laughs.
Yeah.
And then the second time for all the profound stuff.
Sure. I guess getting more and more into the young kids who listen to the show, this is more their time. She played Mrs. Frizzle on the Magic School Bus. Now, do you remember anything about that, or it's probably not your time?
I know nothing about that.
Well, here's the thing that got me was, she entertained me in 9 to 5 when I was a kid. I loved that movie. And I actually watched with my son, I watched the Magic School Bus, and I'm thinking, here's this woman who's entertained 2 generations, and if you consider comedy's a business that's built to chew you up and spit you out, she's a survivor. That's what they said about Joan Rivers. Her best she survived, and this woman's entertainment 2 generations, she survived, but that seems to be, cartoons are like the safe way everybody's going with, Jerry Seinfeld doing the B movie there and Shrek there. I mean that seems to be the safe move if you want to stay relevant. Cartoons just don't seem to flop, do they?
Yeah, a lot of people like cartoons.
Let's see. In 1974, she won an Emmy for producing her own television special, Lily. Do you remember the special, Lily?
I don't remember the special.
All right. 72, she won a Grammy Award for the comedy album This Is a Recording. And
Yeah, that's the Lily Tomlin thing. That's Ernestine's album, and that's all Ernestine stuff. And what it is Ernestine. So imagine you've got a character that's got a 3-minute bit.
Right.
So if you write other bits for that character, all of a sudden you've got 15 3-minute bits. Well, that's 45 minutes. That's a good headlining act.
Sure.
You understand what I'm saying? Can I do one of the bits that she did for that, the Ernestine thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Which one was this? It's called The Strike. Hello, Daily News. Yes, there is a strike happening. No, it's just the repairman Vito out in the truck and me here at the office fielding all these different calls. All right, thank you. Gracious, hello, how can I help you today? What's that? You'd like to get a directory? Well, just stand by the side of the road, and if you see a repair truck, just wave your arms and they'll throw it to you. Thank you. Yep, and the time will be 5:62 in 2 seconds. Ding dong. Hello, gracious, hello, how can I help you? What's that? You've just been struck in the head by a directory? I'll bet you were standing by the side of the road waving your arms, weren't you? No, it doesn't sound attractive. No, you might want to call an ambulance. Directory assistance will give you that number. Thank you. Winds are from the southwest at 22 miles per hour, whatever the hell that means. Hello? What's that? You want General Hospital? Yes, that number is listed in the directory, the one that just struck you in the head. And to me, I thought, that's great comedy.
I can tell she really inspired you. Just you imitating her. You're enjoying the heck out of imitating her here. I can tell she definitely inspired you for sure.
Oh my God! Well, that's the thing. If you're gonna do a character, there are 3 things. I coach as well. If you're gonna do a character, anytime you do a character, like for instance, you do Sam Kinison.
Right. Well, they say the highest form of flattery is impression. So I mean, certainly.
Right. So, but you can do it with a mirror. You can do it with a wall and visualize it. Visualize what. So for you, for instance, you visualize what Sam Kinison sees.
Right.
I see, and you change your body to look like him. You don't, you want to make your face look as much as like his, and then you want to sound like him.
Sure.
So every character has a face, a body, and a voice.
You got to see the whole thing, right? Yeah.
So as you're a storyteller, when you're doing storytelling, before you speak as another character, you should embody a character. You should show me
You have to channel them through you, right?
Yeah, show me the body of what they look like. In other words, if I'm going to do Dr. Ruth, for God's sakes, I'd even flip and kneel down on the ground to show you how short she is.
Yeah, right. You have to do the whole. You got to get into character. They call it, right? You don't just do the character.
Right. So
you get into character.
Body, you make a face, and then you speak through it.
Right.
And that's so. When Lily Tomlin does a character, they said, and Lily Tomlin and Richard Pryor loved each other because of this. Because when they embodied a character, you said, "Where did Lily Tomlin go?"
She was somebody else. That's why, right? She was the character. They're not her anymore.
Right.
Well, let's see. 2014, she won Kennedy Center Honors. In 2017, a Screen Actors Guild for a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I know a lot of the stars, they say they won all kinds of awards, but there's only a few you'll go out for. And I know the Kennedy Center, that's one of the top awards in the business right there. So that's quite the compliment to her. I mean, you go out for that. But she's known for her characters. I mean, the telephone operator, a bag lady, a 5-year-old girl. What's if you had to choose your favorite character she does, which one would it be?
It would have to be Tess, who became Trudy, and she goes out. Some guy, some insurance man, comes to see see Tess. This was Garrett Morris on Saturday Night Live. He goes to see Tess, and she goes, "Well, you just can't leave because it says if I chose you or not, you were going to give me my John F. Kennedy ashtray." And the guy goes, "Well, we ran out of ashtrays." And she goes, "You just can't run out." And there's another Lily Tomlin, really funny but very profound. He says, why don't you take this lunar landing coin?" She goes, "Well, I can't put cigarettes out on a coin now, can I?" One small step, form, and he goes, "For man." She goes, "Sure, you hand these things out okay, you got it memorized." So.
She certainly... Well, here's one that shocked me about her, Bob, and I wouldn't have guessed this in a million years, but she owns 2 of the top 3 best-selling comedy albums for a female comic of all time, and that was by Billboard magazine reported that. She's right in there with Joan Rivers. Do you believe that? I mean...
That's unbelievable. I'd probably think of the top 3 it would be Joan Rivers, Whoopi Goldberg, and Lily Tomlin, maybe even Judy Tenuta.
Sure. Which nowadays, I mean, you got the Sarah Silvermans, the Amy Schumers, the Whitney Cummings. It's more of a woman business now than it was back then. I mean, they were really breaking through for the time back then.
Oh, they sure were. Sarah Silverman is another one who I like today.
Sure. She's one of the hottest comics on the scene. Let's see. Lily Tomlin had guest spots on these shows, and maybe you can pick a favorite. But, I mean, these were the hottest shows of the time. Murphy Brown, The X-Files, Will and Grace, The West Wing, Desperate Housewives, and The Simpsons. I mean, was there a show at the time that you loved seeing her as a guest on?
No.
Not really?
Just love her as her. The
Just
other thing, Dennis, I got to tell you something.
What's that?
If you ever go, when you go to see somebody, you might want to get them to try and sign your program.
Sure.
There hasn't been a time I haven't seen her that she hasn't autographed something for me. She really is the most gracious.
That is cool. When you don't forget where you come from, I love that in some comics, and and some people they don't want nothing to do with you. That's the sad when you forget where you come from is one of the saddest things. So that's cool if she didn't forget where she came from.
Right. When she was doing her show on Broadway, she had a line of people waiting in the cold for the box office to open up. So she went out as her character, Mrs. Beasley, who's like this commercial spokeswoman type, Martha Stewart-ish, prudish type, homemaker type.
Yeah.
And she went out dressed up as a nurse and passed out coffee and donuts to everybody waiting in line.
There you go.
Just classy.
Classy. That's class. Don't lose your class. All right. Some of the fans of Funny Like a Clown podcast, they wrote in about Lily. You want me to tell you what they wrote and you can comment on it?
Sure.
All right, let's see. Bill Sawyer and Derek Drown both wrote in the same thing. 1 ringy dingy, 2 ringy dingies. What is that from?
That's Ernestine. That's when she was calling people listening before the call began.
So that's one of her characters. Okay. Let's see. Brian Holland writes in. She was funny in Orange County. Do you remember in Orange County or?
That must be a movie I haven't seen.
Okay.
Or a place he saw her.
Billy the Mime writes in, stop talking about cake. Any idea on that one? Stop talking about cake?
I have no clue.
Had to be one of her characters, I'm guessing. Let's see. Her Rodney Wirth, no relation to me, writes in, her sitting in a huge chair playing a little girl. When I was a kid, that cracked me up, and Christy Dave and Larry Greenberg both said that was her favorite character too.
Yeah, that's Edith Ann.
That was she played the little girl there. Okay. Let's see. Robert Kivadans wrote saying she did a sketch, I believe, laughing. I'm not sure. Something about missing in TV, and it sounded all the way through. It kind of was talking about sex. At the end of it, it says, "What we don't get enough of is intelligence." So that must have been the movie she did, laughing about intelligence in the universe.
Yeah.
But she did some naughty stuff for the time, it sounds like.
Not naughty.
Well, for the time, I mean, I wouldn't be considered naughty now, but I mean, back then it was kind of
provocative. I'd say provocative stuff.
right.
Socially relevant stuff, but I wouldn't say naughty.
Yeah, I guess that's the biggest one. Everybody's talking about one ringy dingy, two ringy dingies. That must have been her most favorite thing. All right, Bob, we're getting toward the end of the podcast here. I end off every podcast with some trivia. I'm going to ask you 3 trivia questions about Lily Tomlin. And I'll preface. Nobody ever does good on trivia. I'll preface as well as you know somebody, when they hit you, when you're on the spot, people don't do good, but it's informative. So let's try it anyway. You ready?
Yep.
All right, first question. Before she became famous, her first television appearance was on what show? First time on TV, what show was it before she became popular?
The Smothers Brothers.
Close. The Merv Griffin Show was her first television appearance. Do you remember the Merv Griffin Show? I remember hearing about it. I don't remember watching it, though.
I do. The Merv Griffin Show. Merv invented Wheel of Fortune. Don't forget that.
Oh, all right. We're all watching that.
Merv had a big #1 hit with "I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts."
Okay. All right. Question number 2. We talked about she did the Magic School Bus, but before that she was a guest on 7 episodes of what popular children's television show?
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street it was. You are 1-1. All right, so here's the tiebreaker. And you actually brought this up earlier that she's openly gay with her wife, and she said back in the 70s you didn't have an official coming out because that wasn't something you did. Like nowadays, the world's come a long way. But you mentioned a magazine in the 1970s offered her the front page if she would come out in their magazine. What was the magazine?
Is it Time?
Time magazine it was. 2 for 3. You come a long way. All right. All right, Bob. Thank you for being on Funny Like Clown podcast. Before we go, I'm going to give you the stage. You being a fan of Lily Tomlin, what would you want other fans to know about her?
She really is. I'd like to say she's the standard of what a storyteller should be. You know, she makes sure it's not just. She never says anything just randomly. It's I mean, there's lots of organized random thought, but she's just totally the way for me. She was everything I'd ever want to be, everything I'd ever want to watch. Just captivating, brilliant, funny, all that good stuff. I would love to meet her someday.
One of your heroes in comedy. You can't go wrong when you imitate your heroes. That's what it's all about, because they're who you want to be. They're who you aspire to be in life, and you hope someday you can live up to the greatness that they gave you.
And the class.
And the class they gave you, absolutely. All right, Bob, thanks for being on Funny Like Clown podcast. I wish you luck on the comedy scene, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Dennis. My pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, comedian Bob Gautreau talking about comedy legend in the comedy world, Lily Tomlin, a female comedian, and you got 2 of the top 3 best-selling comedy albums of all time stamped as your mark on the business right there, okay? Because if you did your Mount Rushmore of female comics, hey, she's got to be right up there in it, and congrats to her, and that's cool. She's a class act because you can't stand people who forget. Don't ever forget where you came from. I don't care how big you get in this business. Don't forget where you came from. Funny Like a Clown podcast. Many could imitate, but you can never duplicate the genius of people like that. We'll catch you on the next episode. Until then, keep laughing, because laughter is the best medicine. Bye.